have a problem.
We're in the second week of our series called Into the Unknown. What's that about? Well, it's about change. And if there's one thing that's true about change, it's this: uncertainty. When we go through change, it's like walking right into the unknown. We just don't know what to expect. Whether good or bad, life is full of unknowns, certainties, and changes, right? Change is just one of those unavoidable parts of life. It's something we are always gonna have to deal with. And that means it's something we wanna learn to deal with as well. And this series is gonna help us do that. Whether going into the unknown in our lives results in good changes or not so good changes, I think we can all agree that dealing with the changes life throws our way isn't easy. Here's an example. When your dad gets remarried and you get a really cool new stepmom, that's good, right? But it still means you have to adjust to a new person in the house, and that can be difficult sometimes. Or when you move into a new house in a cool new neighborhood, that can be fun too. But it still means getting to know new people, going to a new school in a new place, and that can be a hard part of the change. And those are just positive changes. I mean, if changes like that can be difficult to deal with, what about the kinds of changes that aren't as good? The kind that leaves us wishing everything could go back to the way it was before. Maybe your parents separated, and you hoped that it would work out and that they would fix their relationship. Instead, they ended up getting divorced. You can't change the fact that you moved to a new school, and you can't change the fact that your best friend chose a new friend group. You can't change the fact that your friends reject you or disappoint you. You can't change the fact that you failed that test. You can't fix the changes that make your life feel a little bit broken right now. When something changes in a way that we don't want it to, it feels a lot like something has fallen apart in our lives. And I don't know about you, but when this happens, what I try to do is fix it. I find myself thinking, I just want things to go back to the way that they were. But what I've learned is that isn't always possible. When you're going through changes like that, sometimes it feels like nothing else can be done. Maybe you've wondered why God hasn't done something about it. If you've ever felt like that, I want you to know that you're not the only one. Almost every person who's ever experienced difficult or painful changes in their lives have thought the same thing. That's why it's important for us to know that while God hasn't promised to change everything to be the way we want, God has promised us something else. And it's something I think can help us when we're faced with going through the unknowns in our lives. A long time ago, there was a group of people who experienced a lot of changes in their lifetime, and they were known as the Israelites. And what they lived through thousands of years ago actually plays a major role in our faith today. But along the way, these Israelites went through a lot of struggles, unknowns, and changes. They made a lot of mistakes, and they made a lot of missteps that got them into all kinds of trouble. So what did they do? Well, every time they found themselves in trouble, they did what a lot of us probably do. They asked God to come through and fix it, to change it, to make things back to the way that they were. Sometimes God did, and sometimes he didn't. But no matter what God did with the changes for the nation of Israel that they were dealing with, God always promised them something that they could hold on to as they walk through the unknown. And it's the same thing God promises us today. Take a look. Okay, so first of all, I think we gotta pay attention to the way that this is worded. When you pass through the waters, when you pass through the rivers, when you walk through the fire. It's not if, but when. In other words, this stuff is gonna happen. Things are gonna change. We're gonna experience the unknown, and we're gonna find ourselves in difficult circumstances, and that's a guarantee. But what's also a guarantee is what God promises us when that happens. God promises to be with us through it, and because of that promise, we can be confident when everything changes. Now, I don't know if that's the type of promise you were hoping for from God. Honestly, sometimes I kind of wish God would have said something else. Maybe something like, no matter how hurt you are, no matter how bad your situation is, I'm gonna fix it. I'm going to make things go back to the way they were, and it will be great. I'm gonna make change easy for you only by making it the easy kind. But that's not what God said. And that makes me think maybe God knows something that we don't. Maybe God knows more than anything. We need to trust that when we go into the unknowns of our lives, that God is with us. When change happens, and it always will happen, God, who never changes, is with us. God never leaves us, and that includes when we're experiencing all kinds of change in our lives. That's what I want you to remember today. God goes with you into the unknown. No matter what you're going through or what's happening at home, no matter how hurt you feel over what your friends did to you or how sad you are because life will never go back to the way it was, God goes with you into those unknowns. And if you think about it, that really is amazing. And that's an amazing promise. Because when I'm hurting from the changes life has brought me, the last thing I want to feel is alone. I want to know that someone's going to be with me. Sometimes just knowing someone is there for us can make us feel a lot better. And when that someone is God, who is bigger than anything else that's happening around us, well, that's pretty cool. While on earth, Jesus said something similar to God's promise in Isaiah. Check this out. Jesus didn't shy away from the fact that we'll be facing troubling changes. In fact, he guaranteed that we would go into the unknown throughout our entire lives. But he told us to take heart, which means to have courage and to remain strong, because he has overcome the world. And when we believe and know Jesus, we can trust that he's got it covered. Knowing Jesus changes everything. And because God goes with you into the unknown, we can promise ourselves that God will always be with us. So what do we do? Since change is going to happen, whether we want it to or not, how can we do what Jesus said to do? How can we take heart and know that God is with us? Well, I think it means making some decisions. First, we have to make a decision to trust God in the middle of the unknown. We have to trust that God is with us through the uncertainty of change. We have to choose to believe that it's true over and over and over again. Maybe for you, that means saying it out loud when you're struggling through change. God is with me. Maybe it's writing it down or asking a friend to remind you of it. Or it might mean memorizing one of the verses we read today to help you when you need it. Whatever it looks like for you, make a choice to believe and remember that God goes with you into the unknown. And second, act like God is with you. God's very spirit lives inside of you. God couldn't be any closer. You can talk to God anytime, all the time about anything. You can tell God what's worrying you and ask for help. If you're having a hard time remembering God is with you, try to remind yourself that God's there and that you're not alone. Make the decision to act like God is with you while you go into the unknown and deal with the uncertainty of life. And finally, change how you respond to change. We can't always control the things that happen to us. We can't control or stop changes that come our way, but we can control how we respond to them. Instead of shutting down, we can choose to open up to a friend or even one of our landing leaders. Instead of acting out in anger, we can choose to pause and take a breath, go for a walk, or say a quick prayer. Instead of giving up when faced with the unknown, we can choose to believe that there's more to come in our story. We can choose to believe that God goes with us into the unknown. And not only that, there are also people in this church who want to be with you through change. There are leaders like Andrea, Lexi, Nehemiah, Felix, and myself. And the students around you here at church that want to encourage you and stay with you through all of life's unknowns. In the good and the bad, they are a group of friends who can help you walk through change and remember that God is with you.